Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And may I begin by also thanking my learned friend from Haldeman, Norfolk for that terrific speech. She is a very tough act to follow. Mr. Speaker, when I read this bill for the first time, my jaw hit the floor. As I had previously discussed in this House, my motivation for signing up to become a politician was the violation of basic charter rights that the Liberals perpetrated in the last Parliament. And even with that background in mind, I had hoped that they perhaps had been chastened and they would not try so hard to claim onto themselves powers explicitly forbidden by our Constitution in this Parliament. But I was wrong. And before I start talking about this bill today, let me just say, Mr. Speaker, it has been shocking to listen to Liberals claim to defend charter rights when they themselves violated Section 2 and Section 8 of our Charter when they imposed the Emergencies Act, and that was determined by Justice Mosley of the Federal Court. All the Liberal members in the last Parliament voted to do that, and I do not want to hear any more about defending charter rights from any such member who has not apologized for that violation. Now on to the present bill. I am concerned, as I say, by the following sections. 15.1 and 15.2 give the Minister the unprecedented, incredible power to kick any private Canadian citizen off the internet, to cut off their phone line, to turn off their cell phone. That is the plain language summary, but I will quote now the bill in its legalese. If there is reasonable grounds to believe that it is necessary to do so to secure the Canadian telecommunication system against any threat, the Minister may prohibit a telecommunication service provider from providing any service to the specified person. Now, perhaps this might make sense to do in an extreme circumstance if a person is trying to cause our satellites to crash or to jam military radar. But this section does not use language about extreme threats of physical damage or threats to national security. It says any threat. And as far as I can tell, given the Liberals' incautious and bombastic use of terms like misinformation, that being any information they don't like, or existential threat, for instance, the member from Milton called the leader of my party an existential threat to our democracy, which is, of course, bananas. So given their incautious and bombastic use of these phrases, it seems to me that the industry minister could deem any speech she doesn't like any threat, and then kick that person off the internet. This section reaches Chinese Communist Party levels of government overreach, and they should be ashamed of themselves. The bill gets worse, it does not get better, Mr. Speaker. 15.2, Clause 5, gives the minister the ability to make her decision to kick someone off the internet. Secret. So imagine that. You've annoyed the Liberal Party overlords, and they've decided to kick you off the internet and cut your phone line. You can't tell anyone that you've been cut off. I have no idea how this could even possibly be enforced, but imagine being put effectively in a digital gulag, unable to use the phone or the internet or your online banking, and if you tell anyone that this happened, you could go to physical jail. I do not doubt that the Liberals will stand and say that I'm being somehow outlandish in my interpretation of this. I am not. It is there in black and white. Let me quote it for them. It seems like they haven't read it. 15.2, Clause 5. An order made under subsection 1 or 2 may include a provision prohibiting the disclosure of its existence or some or all of its contents by any person. And if you aren't inclined to believe me, please just Google it. Bill C-8, Canadian Constitution Foundation. There you will find their October 1st, 2025 publication where their expert lawyers corroborate my concerns. Mr. Speaker, I am sorry to say the bill continues to get worse. It does not get better. Section 15.4 says the minister may require any person to provide within any time any information that would help her make a decision under 15.1 or 15.2. So it seems to me that if this legislation passes in its current unamended form, the Minister of Industry could wake up one morning, decide that you or any other private citizen, maybe, possibly, she's not quite sure, could be some sort of threat to our telecommunication system, with no warrant, no trial, no automatic judicial review, she could compel Rogers or Telus to give her that citizen's address book or their internet search history or their browser history. This is unreasonable and it is shocking. This is the Liberal Party under their new Prime Minister. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. In my first speech to this House, I beseech the new Prime Minister to discard this darkness and turn towards the light. By reintroducing this Trudeau legislation, he has failed to make the turn. Mr. Speaker, it is not just me raising these concerns. They tried to ram this bill through the last Parliament. Multiple civil society groups wrote an open letter to former Minister Marco Mendocino alerting him to these problems. Signatories to that letter include the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, the Canadian Constitution Foundation, the International Civil Liberties Monitoring Group, la Ligue des Droits et Libertés, Open Media, the Privacy and Access Council of Canada. Here is a quote from that letter. Bill C-26 grants the government sweeping new powers not only over vast swaths of the Canadian economy, but also to intrude on the private lives of Canadians. Here's another quote. Time and again, we've seen federal governments try to grant themselves the power to intrude on our private lives in the name of security. And time and again, people in Canada have had to come together to push back. They go on to say that the bill lacks guardrails to constrain abuse, permits unknowable orders to trump public regulation, authorizes the use of secret evidence in court, grants powers without accountability, and lacks justification. That is, it doesn't even fix the cybersecurity problems it purports to solve. Do the Liberals believe that creeping authoritarianism worldwide and on this continent is a problem, or do they not? And if they do, why have they written a bill with such authoritarian provisions? Why have they failed entirely to take the advice of these civil liberty groups? Mr. Speaker, once again, this bill will go to committee. Once again, Conservatives will be called upon to do the Liberals' homework and repair this deeply, deeply flawed bill. The offending provisions that I have described do not make us any safer, Mr. Speaker. The industry minister turning off a private Canadian citizen's cell phone does nothing to stop hackers in Russia, China, and Iran from wreaking havoc on our telecommunications infrastructure. They can't fix the problem because they don't understand the problem. They don't even understand where the problem is coming from. And in the relatively uncommon situation where the threat is indeed coming from a private Canadian citizen in his mother's basement, why would you cut off his Rogers account, get a warrant, arrest him, have a trial in open court, and put him in jail? It is the Conservatives who care about and understand cybersecurity, Mr. Speaker. Those with even a passing familiarity of the day's news will recall that Conservatives called to ban Huawei from our 5G networks for 3 years before they on the opposite side deigned to take that threat seriously. We will salvage what is good out of this bill, and we're happy to do that work for the good of Canadians. But this cleanup job should not be necessary. If the Liberals would merely live up to their apparently insincere reverence for our charter rights, we wouldn't even need to have this conversation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Question and commentaire. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's always interesting when you hear Conservatives make these extreme, outlandish claims. The member opposite tries to say, you have government, you know, the Liberal Party. We're going to take away your internet. We're going to take away your cell phones. We're going to deny you the opportunity to do your banking. And they come up with this whole conspiracy wearing well, not necessarily wearing a tin hat, but this conspiracy theory, how big government's going to take everything away when the legislation is all about protecting Canadians, protecting the economy. Does the member see any merit in having cybersecurity legislation that would ensure that the interests of Canadians is being served, such as our economy, economic transitions that take place every day by the thousands? Does he not see the merit for protecting that?
The Honourable Member for Kitchener South Hespeler.
Mr. Speaker, I wish this was a conspiracy. I wish the Liberals had the shame to keep this secret. It's open, it's in the bill. Multiple civil society groups have written letters to them asking them to change this, sounding the alarm. And when he says he thinks that I think it's a conspiracy that they might freeze bank accounts, they already did that, and the federal court told them that was a violation of charter rights, and they have no response to that. I'm asking them, apologize. If you're stand up, you have a lot to say. Now would be a terrific time to apologize for violating our charter rights in the last Parliament. I'm serious. I don't know why you're laughing. Excuse me, Mr. Speaker.
So just a reminder to members, it's through the chair. I'm only getting up so that the camera goes on me so I can choose a new member to recognize. The questions and comments are all for Kamloops, Thompson, Nicola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's always a pleasure to rise on behalf of the people from Kamloops, Thompson, Nicola. I thank my honourable colleague for his speech. These are the types of things that I think really bring us to this House when, on the one hand, we recognize there's an issue. Cybersecurity is of concern to all Canadians. We do lag behind our Five Eyes allies in this regard. On the other hand, we have to balance that with civil rights, with the Charter, which sometimes the Liberals want to talk about, except when they're alienating charter rights from people, as often happens. So I wonder if my honourable colleague could speak about that balance, the need to address a problem, but the need to do so while also respecting rights. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Kitchener South Hespeler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my learned colleague. He is a lawyer. He understands this balance. His whole work has been in the tension between this balance, and I respect very much what he has to say about it. It is a centuries-old problem, this tension between rights and security, and we have centuries-old solutions to this problem. Solutions like warrants, judicial review, open trial, open evidence, a right to a lawyer.
Exactly.
This bill precludes all of that. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We need to build back into this bill the long-standing, charter-upheld guarantees of our liberty. There's nothing novel about that.
Right.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires? L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire au ministre.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Canadian Identity and Culture. Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for their remarks. Now, I'm talking about Thérèse de Blainville. Citizens have confidence that we have a solid constitution and that we're protecting the Charter of Freedoms and Liberties. Now, the question here is, what should we do to protect them in the face of cyber threats? So I'd like to hear from my colleague. Are they ready to work with the government to find the best solution to protect our citizens in the cyber realm? Because that's part of the Charter as well.
For Kitchener South Hespler.
Yes, Conservatives will work day and night to fix this bill, to improve our cybersecurity on this committee, in every committee, in this chamber. Yes, we are committed to improving cybersecurity. We are committed not to violating charter rights. Thank you.
Time for a short question. Question or comment? The member for Edmonton Manning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, the government likes more control over Canadians through Bill C-8. Can the honourable member, through his wonderful speech and detailed speech, explain to us where the government wants to have an overreach and more control over Canadians?
The honourable member for Kitchener South Hespler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It has unfortunately been a theme with this government. It is not just C8, it is also C9. It's also C5 in certain respects. Every bill, every problem they come across, they think the solution is to give themselves more power. They think that if they were to run the telecommunication system, it would be safer. They've been running the post office for the last 10 years. They've been running the passport office. I don't see any evidence that putting them in charge of things like our telecommunications makes anyone any safer. So thank you for the question.